What are the things that founders experience that if people heard more about them would give people a sense of what's difficult, not for everybody, or not at the early stage that everybody experiences, but that gets to the nuance?
As simple as it sounds, communication with a growing team, especially with a distributed team now, becomes increasingly difficult.
It's something that I've, over the years, have realized I'm really bad at, and it causes problems, and I need to get better at it.
You know, there's always a difference between what you say and what someone hears. When you're in my shoes and I have to give a presentation through Zoom to 600 people and hope that they all get exactly what I want out of that conversation is very, very difficult.
So when I notice the conflicts there, I now am mature enough to be like, oh, time out. I know what it is. I'm being a bad communicator. I didn't bring you along for the ride. So let me go back. We often talk about the roadmap. I want to talk about the road trip.
Those messages and those conversations can happen in small group levels. And so we arm our managers and we do like these messaging cascades where it's like, here's what these people need to hear. Let's go talk to our managers. The key thing of that though, and this is the second point I was going to make, is communication is a two-way street.
Right.
And I think if you just say, okay, here's what I'm going to tell those people, here's what I'm going to tell those people, here's what I'm going to tell those people, you're missing something essential and you risk stepping in it. And so the way we do those cascades is like, I'll go tell this group of people, call it our senior leadership team, and I'll say, here's the thing I want to get across to the company. When you hear that, what doesn't land?
Right.
What questions do you need to be prepared for that your team is going to ask you?
Right.
And by asking those two questions, then you really get somewhere, because then they'll tell you, oh, I totally get what you're saying. But if I roll that out to my team, they're going to have this, that, the other question. Yeah. And then we can talk about the answer. So like, you really want to over prepare everyone who's going to be participating in a conversation like that so that they don't step into something that they're not prepared for.
I will forget to bring people along. I will forget to say, oh, I understood that like I'm ending here, but I had not explained all of the important milestones to get there and the reason why taking these actions in this particular order, why the order of operations matters for us to get where we gotta get.
One unlock that I've had recently is when there's a decision to be made, it's very important and very helpful to everyone to explain out loud how the decision's gonna be made and who's going to make it. And so if I'm hearing you, if we're talking about, you mentioned work from home or any of a million decisions that have to get made. And if I'm like, hey, I really want to hear what you have to say about this. Your input's very valuable. And like, I want to work on this with you. And you talk for an hour about your preferences and then I make a different decision. You're like,
did you hear me?
Who's that jerk? Yeah, like I told him what I needed. He couldn't even do it against my wishes. What was wrong with this person? Yeah, like, does he hate me? And so I think explaining to people that like there's someone accountable for the decision and everyone else's job is to give input and advise and ultimately to support the decision.
What I want is these kind of annoyings like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Hey, are we on the right path? Are we on the right path? And then having a team that's comfortable knowing, hey, we've got to switch gears. And we should not have egos about our strategy and our plan. Like, I don't know anything for certain. Yes. I've got really strong conviction.
Yes.
So like, you all need to be, yes, I'm the leader and you've signed up to my vision, but like, I need to be able to tell you all that like, I was wrong.
Right.
Like, we need to reassess. And sometimes it's a bad wrong and it's a big reassessment.
I would say one very practical thing that I've learned to do is to be incredibly explicit about my intentionality, to say it out loud, which isn't a normal human thing to do.
Right. My intentionality is to win this fight with you.
Like, work is different, you know, and as a leader, you have that on you, that you have to be clear about what you're trying to do and what you mean to say. And then you say it as best you can. But if you skip that part, then people often fill in their own interpretation.
We gotta take a step back. And sometimes I think we forget, like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Right? We were just talking a minute ago about these problems that we see and these abilities for us as founders to go solve those problems, right? Using technology or convergences of innovation. But it's like, no, at the end of the day, there's a consumer base, a customer that shares this problem, right? And they share it at scale, right? And because the problem is bigger than you and I, we can build a business around the problem, okay? So let's start there. It's like, okay, now we have a customer, we have to service a need, right? And they have needs, desires, and wants, and we have to understand those. And then we have to go build a product that's gonna service that need and solve this problem, right? And then we have to build a team that's gonna build that product. And we have to remember all this. And so at some point, it is gonna seem a little weird where I'm like, hey, Like, you want to collect a salary, you really like your health insurance, right? And then that's expensive. And so we need a profit, and we need revenue, and we need a customer, and we need a product, and I need a differentiator, and I need a feature, and that feature needs a whole bunch of like tiny little components. And so
needs a brand.
Yeah. And this thing right now, in this moment, in this conversation might seem insignificant to you. And it's because I did a really bad job of telling you, yes, on its own, it is insignificant, but it is a very vital piece of a puzzle where if it doesn't fall into its slot along with everything else, the whole house of cards comes crawling down. So when we do this, and we do it right, and we do it in this order, the plan is we take over the world.
A lot of things are hard, but one thing that's really easy is to be authentic.
Right.
So I remember when we were 20 people, we would do a company-wide meeting at the end of the day on Friday, where we would all kind of turn to each other and talk about something that someone else had done that you wanted to shout out for.
Right.
You know, and it was just this really nice moment. It was like, oh yeah, everyone goes around, gives a shout out. It was very sweet.
No one's feeling defensive.
You know, no one's trying to do anything other than, you know, make each other feel good before we go home for the weekend. Right. And then like we got a little bit bigger and we got a little bit bigger and we had a San Francisco office. And so we had to have IT involved and we had to have a microphone we're passing around. And by the way, it's 5 o'clock on Friday, but it's only 2 o'clock in San Francisco. They're still working.
Yep.
So they're kind of not fully in it. They're distracted. And this thing that went from this beautiful ritual, we actually called it Feelings Friday because it was so emotional, kind of became a chore. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And so we had to like pull it apart and refactor it and think like, why are we even doing this in the first place? And how do we re-engineer it for the scale we're at now? And so that's a constant renewal process.
Teams forget our job as the founder or the leader or the CEO is to go forward with it.
Yes.
So you're going to hear me talk to customers and talk to investors, and I am going to speak as though there is no way in which I'm wrong.
I have to,
right? And I think they forget that. It's like, hey, there are two conversations going at any time. The sales pitch, the vision pitch, and then the reality. And the reality is I'm scared shitless. I have no freaking idea. You are going to build something that's going to help me figure this out. We're going to A/B test it. We're going to learn along the way. We're going to make all these pivots. And then we will figure out the deviation between where we are and where we end up.
And so we use this framework. It's called RAPID. We didn't invent it, but it's like a recommender, an approver, which is really a veto. So like legal is often an approver, a perform. So like when the decision is made, who's got to actually do the work, an input, and a decider. And so we'll write it out. We'll say, here's the question at hand. Here's the RAPID. In other words, here's everyone's role. And then here's how we're going to make that decision. Well, here's the criteria. Being free, like being clear about whose decision it is, frees all the other people up from worrying about the decision as their, they don't think it's their job.
Right.
And if you don't say all that, then people sometimes assume that their input, maybe we're going to vote on it, or we're going to build consensus, or maybe just the boss is going to decide because, that person's highest up on the totem pole or whatever. And you create a lot of ill will and a lot of miscommunication that way. So that RAPID framework has really worked wonders.
The byproduct of this is you get a team who wants to like just naturally inherently work harder, faster, because they're like, they're invested.
Yes.
Right? You're not just showing up to a job to do work in which you are compensated for, which I get, like that's the math. And I respect that, but I want somebody who's like, they almost can't turn it off because they're so excited.
Yes.
It's like, I want to do this. I want to build this. I want to be a contributing factor to this thing going out into the world.